Brief backstory. A couple years ago, I came across this book called Weird Florida. Don't know if I saw it. Good, well then you probably are familiar with the subject matter of the story. But I thought it was really interesting to read about all of these, kind of random places and legends and myths and stuff about Florida that you don't normally hear about when you think about, Mickey Mouse and beaches and that sort of thing. So I started, I was kind of inspired to read a couple stories, kind of started a collection of stories inspired by either places or events that were mentioned, everything from like a plague of frogs to haunted schoolhouses. So this is just kind of the latest thing. It deals with the skunk ape, and that was my inspiration for the story. It's called cryptozoology. My father considers himself a cryptozoologist, which sounds scientific and important, but all it really means is that he's spent the last 20 years of his life attempting to find a creature that doesn't exist. Now at 57, he's living off food stamps in the swamp, a grizzled, mud-splattered wraith of a man who coined my nickname and taught me how to recognize poison ivy. He stands before me in the cottony afternoon, a shadow against the coral sky, staring down at the sloping porch floor of his one-bedroom home, and I know what he's about to say. He needs my help. Help over the past several years has always taken the form of money, which is why when I informed my husband that I was visiting Pops, Matthew didn't even look up from his runny eggs before warning me, "Don't give him a penny, Dink. You're just enabling him." Dink is the nickname Pops gave me because of my childhood obsession with the Stink Johnson jazz records. Matthew rarely calls me anything but Diane. When I didn't respond, a knot coiling in the base of my throat, Matthew took a long sip of his orange juice, licked his lips, and added, "Don't you think it's about time that you tell him the truth about that stupid ape?" This afternoon, Pops won't look me in the eye. He makes small talk about how his airboat tours have been slow, ever since a tour guide almost got strangled trying to wrestle a python, and how a new development is in the works just 5 miles north that will plow down 10,000 acres of the swamp and turn it into one of the zero-lot line Pleasantville communities that are taking over Florida. As he talks, a red hawk swoops down over the house and lands at the top of a hollowed-out palm tree. My father pauses, though he's looking north toward the new housing development, and for a few seconds the air is thick with the complete padded silence of being surrounded by dense brush and water and wildness, of having no escape. When Pops finally opens his mouth to speak, the silence is pierced by a scream, and the hawk flies away with a green frog dangling from its talons. I jump. Pops doesn't move. "Did the frog make that sound?" I ask, embarrassed by how easily startled I am, knowing that if Pops were in a lighter mood, he'd tease me for becoming such a city girl. He still stares north, where the sky has faded to gray streaked with lavender. "I don't want to be a burden," he says, which is what he says every time. But I know what I know, and I'm so close to finding it. He's talking about the skunk ape, Florida's version of Bigfoot, which he began tracking shortly after Mama left 20 years ago. He has a one-room shop open to the public where he sells t-shirts and showcases the evidence he's collected, plaster casts of giant footprints, grainy photographs, and several long strands of coarse gray hair. Pops is looking at me now, and I know I'm supposed to respond. The hawk returns, a shadow now in the deepening dusk, and another frog squeals as the hawk carts it away. My jaw aches, and I realize I've been grinding my teeth. "I know you think I'm crazy," Pops continues. "No." He holds up a hand when I start to respond. "I know you do, and that's okay. You haven't seen what I've seen. Dink, I've seen this thing clear as day. Hairy, smelly, 400 pounds easy. Lots of other people have seen it too. Ain't no other explanation." Blood roars in my ears as Pops talks about his encounter with the skunk ape. The memory of that Florida afternoon rises like acid in my chest. The gummy air, heavy with the drone of bees circling a nearby cabbage palm, my legs slick with sweat and citronella oil, storm clouds silhouetted like mountains in the distance. I'd found the costume at a local Goodwill. It sagged on my gangly 16-year-old frame, patches in the coarse black horsehair where the rubber shone through. The mask was so big, I had to tilt my head back to see, and the inside smelled like blackened milds and rum. I lumbered through the swamp for an hour, alone, though I knew Pops was watching. Could almost feel the burn of his binoculars following me like the heat from a magnifying glass. I acted how I thought the skunk ape might act, foraging through the palmetto, tossing grass into the air, devouring the black-eyed peas Pops had left out to bait me. Matthew is the only one who knows the truth. About a month after we were married, he found the costume balled up in the bottom of a trash bag of old clothes we were sorting to take to a local thrift store. He held the mask in his hands as I tried to explain. His fingers curved through the empty eye holes. I did my best to describe the vacant way Pops used to stare at the television after Mama left, about how he was let go from 3 jobs in 2 months, about the half-empty bottle of Zoloft sitting next to his tonic water in the bathroom. The skunk ape brought him back, in a way, I said, realizing as the words slipped out how cliché and sentimental I sounded. But I had no other way to describe Pop's new vigor as he set out baits of wet beans for the ape, how he remembered the little things again, like changing the oil in the truck, or repairing the screen around the porch so wasps and lizards couldn't slip in. When I finished my attempt at explaining the gorilla suit, Matthew remained silent, his fingers still laced through the holes in the mask. Finally, he cleared his throat and stood, not once looking my way as he tossed the costume back into the trash bag. My tongue is thick tonight as I attempt to speak. Pops has turned to face the gravel path where my car sits, and in profile I can see all the things that make me want to swallow the truth and hand him a check. The dirt embedded in the web of crow's feet around his eyes, the permanent sunburn stretching along the back of his neck, the dark hole where his left bicuspid should be. Pops, I say, and the truth is there, the sadness of it weighing my voice down to a hoarse whisper. He turns to face me, and from the firm set of his mouth, the deep crease in his brow, I know that he knows. I also know, as a low thrum vibrates around us and the mosquitoes move in the falling shadows, that he will refuse to believe me. He will say my deception doesn't matter. The ape is still real. Sometimes hope is too dangerous to let the truth in. When I leave, the darkness is complete, unbroken only by my headlights quivering on the highway. Living in the city, I forget how dark the night is, how many stars you can see when light is removed. Overhead, they dust the sky, winking like shards of glass. I am so distracted I don't notice the animal charge out of the forest in Melaleuca on my left. It plunges across the road, directly into the headlights, a massive thing, a blur, eyes glowing, teeth bared. That's all I see, for I've slammed on the brakes and the car skids off the road into the ditch, nose down in the overgrown weeds. I sit for several minutes, my chest heaving as I try to get my breathing under control. A panther, I reason. There are still a few roaming the Everglades. I try to remember the details. Was it hairy? What color was it? But all I can see are the eyes, the reflective green of an animal watching from the shadows, not wanting to be seen. I know there are a host of explanations, including an escaped primate, for there is a primate research and breeding facility not too far from here. Occasionally an orangutan will get loose, which is the explanation most cited by experts for the proliferous skunk ape stories. I eventually calm down and open the car door, sniffing the air for the telltale rotten cabbage smell the ape supposedly emits. The night is heavy with the sense of saturated earth, decomposing leaves, rain-heavy clouds, the normal odor of the Everglades. But as I climb back into the car, switching off the headlights and sitting alone in the dark, I can't deny there is hope inside me too, and I finally understand.